Hello, guys. I just wanted to touch base with you before we come back in hybrid. I know that it's exciting to be able to see our students, but it's also a little nerve-wracking for multiple reasons. So I just wanted to kind of touch base and maybe get you thinking about what hybrid looks like in your classroom a little differently. So our objective today is to help you reflect on this year so far and determine how you want to approach hybrid teaching. What does hybrid teaching look like in your classroom? So before we go over like some different ideas of what hybrid teaching might look like, I want you to reflect on your remote learning because that can help us know what our strengths are and even our weaknesses before we start this new adventure. So what are some things that you did that were successful during remote learning, and how might you transition those successes during hybrid teaching? So for instance, for me, I think about, I was pretty successful at Edpuzzles. I think it gave me good feedback to the students, and I could really teach what I needed to teach online through video. Those are something I can definitely use in hybrid teaching easily. I can apply those Edpuzzles within the hybrid teaching. So then I want you to think about challenges that you faced in remote learning. So what are some things you found challenging during this time, and how might you address those challenges during hybrid teaching? So I think the biggest challenge, especially at the beginning of the year for me, was getting that communication. I do a lot of like partner talk and Kagan strategies, and so those pieces were kind of missing. It got better once they added the breakouts, but it's still not quite the same. And I was trying a lot of different activities, and some of those activities worked. And so I'll show you what those are. But it was kind of figuring those out. And that's still going to be a challenge because although students might be in person, we still need to maintain that social distancing in the classroom. So again, it's important to remember that this is not normal teaching. There's going to be that social distancing within the classroom, meaning that we can't just go up and start like leaning over a student and trying to help them. We have to maintain that 6 feet distance. And we're only going to have our students in class, see them in person twice a week, which is a huge change. And there's going to be kids that we never see because they've chosen not to come to campus. So those kids are still only going to be virtual. We're never going to see them in person. So it's definitely different than our normal teaching. And so it's important to kind of really think about what that basic hybrid approach that we've gone over, or that CNI has gone over, and that principals have gone over, what does that really look like in your classroom? So remember that basic hybrid approach is that one lesson for all. So just kind of keep doing what you've been doing, which is great. So kids in class A work on lessons and activities similar to kids who are at home, group B. And there is significant teacher interaction with the kids who are in class, but also with the kids who are WebExing in during class time. But it's important to remember that we're trying to engage all students at the same time, that we want to make sure that we're giving opportunities for students that are virtual and that are live to interact, to engage with me, to engage with each other. So what might that look like? Well, there's some pretty basic methods that you can use, keeping in mind this one lesson for all. What might that look like? So the first method is the STEPS method. And again, I got this from a lot of this information I'm going to share with you came from the article that I shared when I shared the link to that is in email for you. Okay. So the first method that the article covered was the STEPS method, and this is probably going to be the one that most people do. Okay, so you have your setup, you teach, you engage, you practice, and they show you know. So let's talk about that a little bit more in depth. So the setup, this is when, like any other day, when kids come in, there's going to be an assignment on the board, and there'll be assignment in your WebEx for students to work on. This is your bell work. So they come in, they start working on whatever it is that you have for them. This gives you an opportunity to take attendance. It gives you an opportunity to let students into your WebEx classroom. Make sure the kids are, getting their sanitizer as they walk in on their hands, those kinds of things. Okay. Then you teach. Then you're going to provide that direct or explicit instruction. This doesn't have to be you teaching in front of the classroom. It can be. It might be a video that you recorded for them, just like you've been doing. It's just totally up to you, but then you have that teaching time. You might want to use something like Pear Deck to move the students through the lesson as you're teaching, but again, you have that bell work and then you have that teaching time. Then you have the engage. This is the practice with feedback. So you can have your in-class students partner up with at-home students. You can use the WebEx breakout sessions to break up your WebEx kids into groups. You can use Google Docs, Google Slides, Jamboards. This is when you get the kids to talk to each other. And I will give some examples of what those Google Docs and Google Slides and Jamboards look like a little bit later in the presentation. Then you have students practice. This is like that independent practice time. So they're practicing the new skill on their own, and then that gives you opportunities to check the students that are in class to make sure that they've got it, and then it gives you time to check the students on your WebEx class that they have it. And then you bring everybody back together at the end, and this is your like ticket out the door. What did they learn? However you want to bring your lesson to a close, you're going to do that with both your WebEx and your in-person students. So this is the step method. This is probably how most of you will have your class organized for each day. Another example of what you might do in a hybrid model is that flip model. So this is when you identify concepts or skills that you want to focus on. Then you create a video teaching that concept or skill. This is the lecture part of the lesson. Then you upload that video and you give students access. The students watch the video. You could have them watch it in class as opposed to like normally with a flipped model, you might have them watch it at home, but you could have them watch it in class. That way you know that they are watching it. And then the students that are on WebEx are watching it too on their own, okay? And then the teacher checks for understandings or discuss with students. So this can be done in a variety of ways, that check for understanding. I oftentimes use a Google form here in which a lot of times I'll just say, how well do you understand this concept? And it'll be, I'm completely confused, or I could teach this. And then I have a few more specific questions to whatever the content I was teaching at that time. Then I can kind of get where they're all at right then, real live, and then I can have discussion with them about that. Or I can even check for understanding just from discussion, and I can see with WebEx students, they can mute themselves and say if they have problems, or they can put it in the chat. And then my other students that are in class can also give me feedback. So we can discuss as a class, or we can have that written feedback if we need to. And then the students take some time to apply that new knowledge while the teacher monitors progress. So for me in my English class, I've actually flipped my PBA the last 6-7 years. So all the modeling and teaching is done on video. And then the kids, I have the check for understanding. And so anything they might still be confused about, like let's say a rebuttal statement, I will discuss that full class, and then the kids are working. And so my hybrid classroom probably will look a lot like this, because that's what I've been doing already before we were even online. And that's okay. And it might look different from the person down the hall, and that's okay. We just need to remember that, okay? A little bit more advanced way that your hybrid might look is the station rotation. So with this, students work on stations throughout the class period. So you could set it up in 3 stations. One station is where the teacher is teaching. So you as the teacher would have to teach 3 times. These stations or groups could be made up of both online and in-person classes. So your computer would kind of follow you for wherever you were teaching at. And you would teach the in-person kids and the online kids. Again, remember that in-person kids, a little bit different than what we're used to with stations. They might be all clumped together. They still need to maintain that social distancing when they're in their station. But you are the instructor at one of the stations. You lead the students with your actual lecture or teaching that you want to go over. Then station 2 could be some sort of online activity or assignment. This can be on Google Classroom. It can be no red ink. It can be having them research and something. It's totally up to you how that might look for students. And then you want them to try to do an offline activity. So maybe they're doing sketch notes, or maybe they're that you might have them show you later to show that they completed the activity, or maybe you're having them read something just to get them off of the screen for a little bit. And then, of course, the kids that are in person, they would be off the screen as well. So before you begin, you would want to explain each station. A third of your students would start with station 3, a third would begin with station 2, and the last third would begin with station 1. You just want to make sure when you're doing stations that you really have clear expectations of students and that they are following, again, all your procedures and social distancing guidelines. So this is just kind of a visual of what the station rotations look like. So again, you have that teacher-led, online, offline. They can go through these stations, again, while maintaining social distancing. And you can tell group 1, you're going to start with teacher-led station, then the online station, then the offline station. Group 2, you're going to start with the online station, then go to the teacher-led, then go to offline. Group 3, you start with online, then offline, then teacher-led. Okay? So again, these 3 options are just, they all kind of go under this one lesson for all idea, but that might look different in different teachers' classrooms, and we just want to make sure that that's okay. So maybe this sparks some ideas of how you might run your hybrid classroom. You're still doing that one lesson for all. It's just that might look different, okay? And so this was just to give you some ideas of how that might look different. This one lesson for all might look different, okay? The big thing we want to remember is that we want to structure our class so that we are engaging all of our students, our online students and our in-person students, all at the same time, okay? So some other things to consider as we are heading into this, some more reflection questions. What teaching strategies will allow you to continue to foster classroom community in a hybrid setting? So I think that students are really lacking this right now, at least in my own classroom. I've tried and tried and tried. I'm hoping now that we have some, but it may be more difficult. I'm hoping that when they're in person, that helps a little bit to have that class community, but it may make it worse. So we really need to be cognizant of that and try to find strategies that will help build that class community. So for me, anything they can do in groups or partners helps build that class community, okay? It's also really important to decide which strategies best educate all your students every day, including those who never come to in-person class. And we need to make sure that we are providing the best we can for each group, A, B, and that online student, virtual student, always person. Some more questions to think about. What teaching strategy will be easiest for you or easier for you to manage from day to day? So maybe what's easiest for you to manage from day to day is the flipped classroom. Like I said, that was probably what I would do most of the time. Maybe that's not easiest for you to manage, or maybe that's not best for your students. You have to decide what works best for your students as well. So take those into consideration as you're thinking about how you want to structure your classroom. Some other things to consider as we head into hybrid. Of course, we have this, we've met with Jeff, and we know we have to have those A-B desks facing in one directions. Students are probably going to need to be taught that new schedule. Just like any other time we have like a weird schedule and we have to go through it with students multiple times, we're probably going to have to do that with our students. So, give yourself some time that first day or two to make sure to teach the new schedule. The same goes for your expectations. You're probably going to need, these students only know you as an online teacher, so you're going to need to go over those expectations, both expectations for the in-person students and expectations for the online students. And then we want to spend some time investing in those community buildings activities whenever we can. Some more things to consider. You want to try to find some activities that allow A, B, and virtual students to interact all together during the class period. So you can do this with shared documents, Google Classroom questions, Jamboard and Padlet, Flipgrid. There's lots of options that we can do to make sure that students are interacting together. So I have some examples of what these might look like. The first example I have is how you would share a document with students. I like to use just docs. I know a lot of people use slides. This works the same essentially. But the way I set it up is that I make copies of the document for however many groups I have. So I had 9 groups for this activity, and so I made 9 documents. Other teachers, you'd say that they create one document and have one student from the group share it with the other group members and with you. Either way works. Totally up to you how you want to do it. Just for my brain, it works best this way for my classroom. So then when students go onto this document, I encourage them to use the comment section to talk to each other. So they can reply to comments just like you would talk to them when you're grading on a Google Doc using the comment section. They can talk to each other. And I encourage them to do this as they're filling out whatever it is I want them to work on. And I encourage them to use the comment section so that I can spy on them and see what they are doing and what they are saying to each other and make sure that the conversations are working for the activity that they're doing. And so that's one way to have some partner talk, and they don't need to be in the same place. So I can have my virtual students working with my in-person students on the same doc and talking through the comment section with each other. Along those same lines, I have also created a table before in a Google Doc. Oh, and when I put this into Classroom, I don't make a copy for each student. I make it so that students can edit it, so that everybody in the group can edit it. And they're supposed to only work on their doc. Another thing that I've done for students to get them to talk to each other online is I have made a table in a Google Doc. And then I have assigned in one column, I've assigned partners with each other. And then the other column would be where they put their comments. And I've assigned a color to each partner. And they answer the question by talking back and forth, just like they would in person in the classroom. They're just now doing it on a Google Doc. And I have one doc for the entire class. So when I post this on Classroom, I put that students can edit. That's why I do the table, is so that students aren't trying to type wherever and somebody else is trying to type on it and it gets all crazy. And so I've kind of assigned a place for the students to type. Still gets a little crazy, but it's kind of fun to watch. And then I can like comment on what they're typing as they're typing it. So this is just 2 examples of how you can have students share a document with students who are online and also in person, and how they can communicate with each other virtually and safely. Another way is to use Jamboard. If you haven't used Jamboard yet, it's similar to what Padlet was like. I think you have a little bit more options in Jamboard, but it's next. If you click on, it's part of our Google Suite. So if you click on the dots next to your picture, it pops up. You may have to scroll down a little bit. It looks like this. You just click on it and it takes you to a Jamboard. You can actually see what other teachers in the district have done. And then you can see like your own Jamboards. So this first one, students were assigned groups and they discussed in their groups, and then they came up with an answer. And again, that discussion could have been just on the side, like typing with each other. In this case, I had them in breakout groups so they were able to talk to each other, but that may not be available to you in the hybrid. So you may have to have them talk on like a Google Doc first and then come up with an answer, or in Jamboard, they can type in there, come up with their answer, and then erase everything else that they don't want on there anymore. So the groups came up with, they used a sticky note feature in Jamboard, and they put their answers to the questions that I asked on sticky notes so I could see what the groups were doing. This other example is from the literacy coach at Thunderbird, and she had her students work together to analyze a poem. And so they all had jobs, which is over here, and each job had a different color sticky note. And so she could kind of look and see what they were doing. And then she has the pink sticky note, so she could come in and make comments on their Jamboard as they were working. They can write, they can change the colors, they can move these examples and make copies of them. And so this is a way for students to work together on an activity, even though they may not be in the same place. So again, some other things to consider that you may need to do activities that review that learning. So like your expectations, for me, that would be like attack the text. I may need to review that in person, even though I've already taught it online. I might need to review how to do DJs. It just I got to feel my students out and see where we're at. And I might need to review some of those learnings for the first couple of days. I might need to create a new Google Classroom or a new Canvas course. I always create a new Google Classroom because it's too much going on in my Google Classroom if I kept it for a whole year. So every semester, when we start a new semester, I always start a second semester Google Classroom for whatever class I teach. That's just how my mind works. So it's totally up to you if you want to do that or not. You do need to set up a new grade book, just like we would at the end of a semester normally, or the beginning of a new semester. We have a new grade book. You've got to do that because remember our grades are closing. And you may need to, even though we know each other kind of already, we might need to do some of those icebreaker activities because, again, different situation. Now they're in person, some are online. We've got to try to find icebreakers that can include both students. My ed profession kids, one of their committees is like classroom culture, and they are going to play Kahoot. And so the online kids can play it and we can do it in class, and it's about students in the classroom. They sent in like facts about themselves, and we're going to do a Kahoot when we're back in person in the hybrid model. So that's kind of an icebreaker activity to get everybody playing together. And you may have to update your syllabus. I say this because I know CTE has some things that they need to update on their syllabus. So in your class syllabus, you may need to change a few things because it looks different than it did at the beginning of the year. So you might have changed at the beginning of the year, but you might need to give students a new syllabus because you might have needed to make changes based on your expectations for the hybrid model. Some other things to consider. You got more procedures than we normally would have that we need to cover with students. And if you want a list of some procedures that have been brainstormed that you might need to consider, go ahead and send me an email and I will share that list with you. Jen Walp created this cute little pictograph of her hybrid classroom procedures, what they need to do when entering class, how they are to wear a mask, what they're supposed to be doing during class, how do they use a restroom, how do they work with a partner, and then what do they do when they exit your class. So this would be a great tool to email to students before they even get to your class on Monday, once we know who our A and B groups are. So remember that you do need to cover those procedures with students, just like it's that first day or week of school in August. We're going to go back through and really talk about procedures with our students that we may not have hit at the beginning of the year. And then, of course, like I said, we've all met with Jeff. And so is our space ready? Do we have our cleaning station? Our web cameras working? Do our students' desk where they're supposed to? Probably a good idea to post the schedule on your board so students can see it. And then seating charts, there is a way to create more than one seating chart in your teacher view. So if you want a video for this, the Washington Media Center director made a very quick short video of how to do this. So just send me an email and I will send that over to you. Above all, if you want to talk, call me, email me, come see me. I am not going anywhere really. I might go up north a little bit over fall break. So if you need to touch base with me, please feel free. And we've got this, guys.